All right, so guys, we are live on YouTube now. I did figure out how to get it live thanks to a Google link. I'm not sure if this will be ready for the draft, but YouTube is making a change with their videos. But I did get it live for today. So Josh Allen is the player I'd take at 3. And for those on YouTube, Nick Bosa went at the Cardinals at 1, and Quinnen Williams went to the 49ers at 2. I'm voting Josh Allen. Kerm, how do you feel? Allen to the Jets at 3, which means the Raiders are on the clock at 4. And I think we should give the Raiders Clelin Ferrell here because he's the best player on the board. He did have success versus Jonah Williams, and the Raiders have been searching for a replacement to Khalil Mack. So I think Clelin Ferrell fits the bill as far as what the Raiders want to do and what they need to do at number 4. Would you like to make a counter argument before we finalize that pick?
Well, here's the thing. The Raiders got rid of a lot of talent, and I can see why. Contracts that were coming up, these guys were going to ask for, as we've heard, hundreds of millions. Their position really didn't warrant that, even to this. So I don't think their position is warranted even with higher production. So the big thing here for the Raiders is to re-up the talent, not be nothing else. So as I'm looking through the talent pool, I looked at, once again, Sweat. I looked at Ed Oliver is an excellent run stuffer. He didn't rush the passer as much as would have liked last year, which is why he's dropping. But he's a talented player who can still develop. And then you have what you would say, you had the Grady Williams and you had the Clelin Ferrell. Kerr, what do you think?
Like I said, the Lions don't have too much to add because of and I was reading something on what we talked about earlier. So I really didn't hear a whole lot, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Ferrell and Williams are the top 2 players, and they're really the only 2 blue chip players in this class. So regardless of what route we go at 4, I think Greedy comes off the board at 5, or if we go Greedy at 4, Ferrell goes to Tampa Bay at 5 to replace Curry. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Ferrell to Oakland at 4 and Greedy Williams at 5. The top player on our board for the New York Giants at number 6 is Dwayne Haskins out of Ohio State. Would anyone like to make a counter argument for why the Giants will not go with Haskins at 6? Because I think he's the pick for them at this spot.
Well, I'm not the biggest fan of Haskins. I think Haskins is truly raw. He doesn't handle pressure as well as I would like. And that's one of the top concerns that I've been hearing from people who are talking when they're not supposed to in front offices is that how will Haskins handle pressure? And there are a lot of question marks about that. And let's face it, in New York, you're going to get pressure. There's going to be a lot of and I think right now, with what's going on here, I think the biggest thing for the Giants, they could trade down. But the biggest riser right now is at quarterback anyway, is the Duke quarterback. And his name just escaped my mind. But I've got a picture of him in my head. But the Duke quarterback, Chris, what's his name?
Well, you've got Dwayne Haskins, you've got Drew Lock, and you've got Daniel Jones. And I think it's closer than people think. Like, even though Haskins is my QB1, he's not running away with it. I think that if he struggles at the combine, Haskett, Locker, Jones could jump him.
I think right now, Jones, if he comes out the rest of the way and impresses, Jones will jump ahead as the top quarterback because right now there are a lot of people who do think he's already the top quarterback. So
Haskins might have the biggest ceiling, but he's also raw, whereas Jones probably has the best floor.
Best floor and potentially the best ceiling because of his mechanics and overall technical prowess.
Yep.
He also has a lot of physical gifts. So when you add the physical gifts to the technical prowess, then really all you had to do is get the eyes and the mindset. Which, for a smart guy, I mean, he went to Duke. You know, they're...
Yeah, and he played in the Cutcliffe's offense. That's worth mentioning.
Yeah, it does hurt him, but you look, and he picked up an NFL offense and learned to read NFL defense.
Okay, Joey and I are having a QB feud at number 6 between Haskins and Daniel Jones, so Kerm is going to have the deciding vote in this scenario. And if he goes with Drew Lock, then it's just a three-way quarterback argument. Kerm would not do that just to piss us off.
There's quarterbacks that were juniors. I don't know which one came out of this.
Well, Joey and I are debating which QB to give the Giants at 6. And we both disagree on the QB, so you hold the tiebreaker. There's the QB from Ohio State and the QB from Duke.
I think I'm going to have to go Ohio State because the ACC outside Clemson is not really a good football school. And he did go to Duke, so he might be able to handle the New York pressure because we all know the New York pressure, you got the media pressure, then the pressure from fans. That's one of the hardest cities to play in.
All right.
And that's one of the reasons I won't give him Haskins is because Haskins is like, oh, I can go out and get the spotlight. Well, Johnny Manziel was great at that too. They said the same thing. Johnny Manziel didn't handle it well. Of course, I'm not comparing Haskins to Manziel. Manziel was in the case when he walked into the league, but you know, and then you look at the pressure on the field, and NFL executives right now are questioning whether Haskins can handle pressure on the field. If he's rushed, they have serious questions about whether he can handle a pass rush. So, and that's a staple of Urban Meyer quarterbacks. They handle a pass rush, and they are basic rushing quarterbacks. They're more athletes than quarterbacks. And that's the big question about Haskins.
So I might have to go with Daniel Jones.
So Haskins is the pick then. Kerm and I have overturned Joey's decision, and we're going Haskins at 6. That being said, the Jaguars could be in the market for a QB at 7.
Chris, listen to Kerm.
But yes, number 7, the Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. They could go Jonah Williams here. He's the best player on my board. But they could go with Daniel Jones too. They could go with Daniel Jones at number 7 if they wanted to. I mean, this is a very interesting situation, to say the least, with the Jaguars. How do you...
Chris has selective hearing, Kerm. Chris has selective hearing. Sorry.
How dare you accuse me of having selective hearing? How dare you?
For number 6, I went Daniel Jones.
You know what? I'm giving the Jaguars Daniel Jones now because Kerm's trying to screw with me. You're trying to screw with me. You say Haskins.
I'm trying to screw with you. You said it 3 times before you finalize it.
All right, the Jaguars have to suffer under Daniel Jones because you're playing hearing games. So Daniel,
because you can't hear correctly.
Chris, why is he finally casting people?
All right, so I thought Kerm said Dwayne Haskins at 6, so I gave them Haskins, and then the Jaguars, I guess, get Daniel Jones because of this goofball trade or whatever. But point is, 2 QBs go off the board. 2 QBs go off the board. We're on Detroit at number 8. And Jonah Williams is the best player on the board, but the Lions have good tackles. So you could get Byron Murphy. You could get Ed Oliver here. There's a lot of different directions you could go in if you're the Detroit Lions at number 8. Wilkins is on the board. I've seen some mock Rashawn Gary, Devin White. The Lions have a lot of options. They could even take someone like N'Keal Harry. But I'm going to suggest Byron Murphy because they need a cornerback. That cornerback, they need a cornerback next to Darius Slay, and I feel like they should take Byron Murphy in this scenario.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and because there was a report here that Eddie Ansah had announced his retirement. Is there any truth to that?
Now I'm going to have to look it up.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now. Because if that happens, I heard a report that he already had or he was going to.
Ansah is only 29 years old. So he'd be retiring early like Calvin Johnson if he did it.
Yeah, because it was something about injury. Yeah. There's something about injury, and he didn't retire. That was for last year. Yeah, there's a good chance they don't bring. Either way, there's a good chance that Ansah is not with the Lions next year. So I would go ahead and I would give him Montez Sweat to replace Ansah if Ansah isn't there. I know I don't usually like to go ahead and do these what ifs when coming with the draft, but this is one of those where there's smoke, there's fire, I believe, and I do not believe he'll be with them next year.
All right, Kerm, how do you feel about this pick? We've got Murphy, we've got Sweat. Udi. I feel like we're going to show SEC bias here and go Montez Sweat.
I don't like the SEC bias.
Huh? I couldn't hear you. The wind.
I'm agreeing with Joey.
Awesome. So Kerm and Joey are agreeing with each other, and we're going Montez Sweat at number 8. It was a good pick for the Detroit Lions, one of the better players in the Senior Bowl. And the Bills here, the Bills can go in a lot of different ways. I'm suggesting that the Buffalo Bills take Jonah Williams at 9 because he's the best player on the board. Plus, they can move him to right tackle next to Deion Dawkins, or they can put him at left tackle. And Josh Allen has his protection, and that's awesome for Josh Allen.
Yeah, and I agree, if nothing else, that I do not believe that Jonah Williams is an elite prospect. I know some people get upset hearing that, whatever.
We thought he was an elite prospect heading into the season, but he's not. He's not the elite prospect we hyped him up to be, but he's still a top offensive tackle in the class.
Yeah, in this class, yeah, he is. And I do agree that right now, we watched Josh Allen last year, and for the love of crap, if that boy doesn't get protection, I know he's got his accuracy issues. I know he's got a lot of issues other than that. But he's got a lot of upside, and if they don't get him protection, his upside is going to be going through the ground because he's not going to survive.
Yep. That brings us to the Denver Broncos at number 10. The top two players on my board are Byron Murphy and Ed Oliver. However,
What you got, Herm?
however,
I
the
agree. Jordan Lewis is not one of the best tackles come out of Alabama. But and I agree with him moving him to right tackle first year, get him adjusted to NFL speed, and then later on move him to the more demanding left tackle spot. Because he definitely was not elite at left tackle this year for Alabama.
Beans.
Go ahead, Chris, with your next one.
Number 10, Chris has the Denver Broncos goes with Drew Lock.
yes,
And
but we could change that pick because Joe Flacco did get traded to Denver, but they might move on from Keenum, they might not. I think it's a leverage thing at this point because, number one, if you keep both QBs and you draft Locke, you're basically grooming him for the future. Number two, if Drew Lock does not ace every part of the draft process, then Denver doesn't have to take him. So he has to ace the combine. He has to ace the pro day. I did watch Drew Lock versus South Carolina yesterday. He had trouble throwing the football in the rain. I don't know if Elway's going to take that into consideration, but he did struggle with throwing the football in the rain.
Most QBs struggle with throwing though. Most people struggle with throwing to let anything in the rain. You can't hold that against them.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing. We really have to look. Joe Flacco, one way or the other, is 34 years old. Okay? So, that being said, the holy crap. The Broncos have to look at what it is. They have to look at, hey, this guy is a short-term solution. So, whether they get a quarterback in the first round this year or get a quarterback in the first round next year, one of the next 2 years is going to be a quarterback. And everything I've been hearing is that they really like Locke. So I'm going to go with Locke simply because everything I've been hearing is that Elway loves him.
I've been hearing the same things, Joey, so for that reason, I would agree with you. So Drew Lock at 10, and Byron Murphy and Ed Oliver both fall out of the top 10 in this mock draft.
But it might be another case with Locke, when Dawson and Flacco get his hit off for the year, and then Flacco can become like a Kurt Warner was to Eli Manning, and his last couple of years in Arizona, where he's sort of a mentor type, a wall.
This debate is going to be fun at number 11 because you have Ed Oliver, you have Byron Murphy, and you have Dalton Risner. On one end, you could argue Dalton Risner's the best pick for the Bengals because he bolsters that offensive line and fixes their hole at right tackle. But on another end, you could argue that the Bengals losing defensive tackles to free agency and Ed Oliver being the best player on the board, that Ed Oliver is the right pick for them. I don't think Murphy's the right pick for them because the Bengals do have a lot of depth at corner. So, but I am seriously considering Ed Oliver over Dalton Risner, even though Risner fills a bigger need for the Bengals. I am seriously considering Ed Oliver over Risner at 11. How do you feel about this Bengals predicament we're in?
The Bengals predicament is a predicament of their own making. Because they have killed all sense of what little ability they had with that franchise. Well, thankfully they got rid of Hugh Jackson, and so I'll give them credit for that. But other than getting rid of Hugh Jackson, I question pretty much everything they've done this offseason. So if they can stabilize the offensive line, get a little bit of stability in there, then it'd probably be worth it just to give the offense a fighting chance. So in this case, I will go with Risner. Risner is a guy who can he can bring a little bit of time. I mean, he isn't a world beater. None of the offensive tackles in this class are, but he is solid.
Yeah. And I could go with Oliver or Risner, or we're going to go with Risner here to save time, which means the Packers are on the board at 12. And the top two players in our top 10, Byron Murphy and Ed Oliver, are both on the board. Now, Muhammad Wilkerson's a free agent at 34 right end. So the Packers could bring in Ed Oliver to replace him here. And that's what I think we should do, because Montez Sweat was on my board at 12, but he's gone. So honestly, Ed Oliver's a game changer for the Packers defense. And if he turns out to be even half as good as Aaron Donald, that's a huge win for the Packers. So I'm going to say we go Ed Oliver at 12, and I don't think we think twice about it here. You're Green Bay.
Yeah, I'm the same thinking. Green Bay was always at its best defensively when they had a great defensive line. They had that for a few years, and it shows pretty badly with how the defense performs without those great linemen. So, in that sense, yes, I think Ed Oliver would be the perfect person to have there.
All right, number 13 is the Miami Dolphins. The top player on my board is cornerback Byron Murphy, but the Dolphins have a lot of stability at corner. Xavier Howard, Cordrea Tankersley. They put their number 3 corner. They gave their corner from Memphis a extension. I don't think Byron Murphy's going to be the pick for Miami at 13, as much as I love what he's done on tape. Now, he could be an option for Atlanta at 14, but now at 13, you've got Christian Wilkins, you've got Rashawn Gary. None of the QBs are on the board. I mean, they could reach for Kyler Murray. So this is an interesting situation the Dolphins are in. Do you reach for Kyler Murray at 13? I have Kyler Murray going to Miami at 48. But do you reach for him at 13, or do you go with one of the defensive tackles on the board? Because this is really a tough predicament for the Miami Dolphins to be in at 13 with Ryan Tannehill potentially gone.
Well, here's the thing. The Dolphins are, I've heard that they're probably going to cut Devontae Parker. They're very thin at receiver. So, for me, I would look at the best wide receiver available at this time, and say, look, you've got N'Keal Harry sitting there. You have Harry. You have a couple other guys there at receiver who could really make an impact, really make a difference. And let's face it, as a downfield thrower, you need downfield help. So at this point, there have also been reports that Harry may be a second or third round pick, that he's getting hyped up by the media. So, but there are a couple receivers available as well. But that was basically just food for thought. And I will go with the defensive tackle. and we can move on from there.
So, are you saying N'Keal Harry or Christian Wilkins, a defensive tackle?
I just said I'd go with the defensive tackle, Chris.
All right. So we'll go with Wilkins. We'll go with Wilkins at 13 then. So Atlanta's on the board at 14. Rashawn Gary would be the unanimous pick in most situations, but Byron Murphy limited Harry to 5 receptions for 20 yards. And the Falcons did get rid of Robert Alford, so they could go Byron Murphy at 14. But they also did get that Isaiah Oliver, so they don't really need another corner. They got Oliver in last year's draft, so Oliver could play next to Desmond Trufant. They don't really need another corner at 14, but they could draft Byron Murphy as a nickel guy if they really wanted to. And he's the best player on the board, so this makes things complicated, to say the least. Either way, I think Byron Murphy comes off the board at 15 if we cannot get him to come off the board at 14, because Washington could pair him with Josh Norman. But I'm thinking Rashawn Gary is probably the pick for Atlanta at 14 now, because they have 2 corners. They don't really need another corner. They need a defensive tackle more so than a corner. So I feel like Rashawn Gary would be the pick here. And then Washington could take Byron Murphy at 15 to pair with Josh Norman.
Yeah, Gary seems like a pretty good pick at this point. Because, I mean, he fits what the Falcons need. He's only 281 pounds. That counts again. That's a huge thing. He's going to put on at least 10 pounds worth of muscle. But if he puts on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle, which his body will support, then I believe that he can transition into a defensive tackle. But you have to remember, his body type, he can support at least 10 more pounds of muscle. But if he doesn't put on weight, he won't go in the first round. People have got to be convinced that he can put on the weight, because otherwise he isn't going to be that first round defensive tackle that people are looking for. And defensive end, X guys, were loaded up this year. So it'll be a tough fit for him to get in there without being a defensive tackle spot.
Well, that means Byron Murphy's the pick at 15 with no QBs on the board. We're just going to give Washington Byron Murphy to pair with Josh Norman. And I just feel like that's a great pickup for Washington, because now their quarterback situation's even more lethal. And Carolina in this situation would get N'Keal Harry for Cam Newton. DJ Moore moves to a number 2 role that's more suitable for him. And Curtis Samuel moves into a slot receiver role that's more suitable for him. And this allows Cam Newton to rebound with the weapons that are in place. And you got Christian McCaffrey, you got Greg Olsen. Yeah, the offensive line's still a mess, but Cam Newton finally has a respectable number 1 target and N'Keal Harry, and that's awesome for the Panthers at 16. So everyone in the top half of our draft board is finally off the board. And any quick thoughts before we get to number 17?
N'Keal Harry, I'm a little skittish about putting N'Keal Harry in top half of the first round, because let's face it, he's a one-trick pony. Some NFL scouts having questions about his overall game, and right now that seems to, even though that trick is a damn good trick, that has me concerned with him. If I was a general manager, I'd be concerned about that guy's not as much of a route runner. Guys, he gets downfield and he makes big plays. He's very good, but it kind of has an asterisk on it for me, because I don't really think he they go that way with him at this point in time. He's got a lot to prove at the combine.
If he decides to participate in the Under Olympics.
Unfortunately, he's one of these players that there are enough question marks. If he doesn't, then he's probably not going to be taken until the later half of the first or second round. He has to show that he can do these other things that NFL receivers are required to do.
All right. And that brings us to number 17, the Cleveland Browns. This is where things get complicated because Dexter Lawrence, he did get a combine invite, but he does have some off-the-field stuff, as does Jeffrey Simmons. One of the players that I've heard a lot of good things about is Gerald Willis III out of Miami. One of Miami's coaches told me that he plays like Warren Sapp in a 43 defense, but he also plays like Vince Wilfork in a 34 defense, despite the fact that he's only 300 pounds. And he did get some double teams versus LSU. So, I mean, he might move up the rankings as well. But Simmons got injured as well as missing the combine. He, tore his ACL, so his stock is going to plummet probably. I know I put him at 18 in the draft game, but his stock's going to plummet. So the Browns, I think they'd go with Lawrence here, but, I mean, this is a tough situation for the Browns to be in at 17 because there's a lot of different ways you could go. You could get a tackle. You could get a receiver. I mean, what are you thinking for Cleveland at 17, Joey?
Yeah, it is a difficult position for the Browns to be in. There have been talks around some people and the media in Cleveland saying that if you have a chance to trade your first round pick and get a proven wide receiver or a proven defensive tackle, you go get him. Sorry. So that's the thing, because the Browns do have a lot of talent on this roster. So there is that. I'm looking, but personally, I am really looking at this point because it is a deep receiver class to the defensive tackle position. And one of the guys I'm really looking at this point is not only Lawrence, but I'm also looking at a couple guys from, I know I've got one guy from Georgia that I'm looking at. And so there are some options. So I think right now, after playing as well as he did in the college football playoffs, I will have to go with Lawrence over everybody else for the simple fact that he just played so well in a very strong situation where he needed to play well.
Yep. So Dexter Lawrence at 17 is going to be the pick. We could punish the Vikings by giving them Jeffrey Simmons at 18, even though he's going to tear his ACL. They need a defensive tackle, but nobody here wants to punish the Vikings, I guess. I'm trying to think. Deontay Thompson could be a good pick to pair with Harrison Smith. Andre Dillard, I guess, if they really wanted a left tackle. I'm trying to think of who the best player is for the Vikings at this spot. because they do need a defensive tackle, but I feel like none of the defensive tackles are worth taking at 18 here, and this is not a good situation for the Vikings to be in. This is a pick I think they should trade, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, it's personally, they had really good receiving play. Yeah, I think their big issue was their defense. So, for me, I would just go best defensive player available because they did not play defense well, and it showed and it hurt all throughout the year.
Well, Daniel Hunter and Everson Griffin are both good defensive ends. You know what? So, best defensive player on our board is Jeffrey Simmons. I know he tore his ACL, but he's the best defensive player on our board. And Joey said to give the Vikings the best defensive player on the board. So, we're going to go against common reasoning and give the Vikings Jeffrey Simmons, I guess. So that leaves the Titans at 19. It's already been decided.
On the medicals, I'm pretty sure that he's going to be at the combine doing medicals. He's going to be checked up on. He's going to have all this stuff. And if they say he's good to go, then he may fall. But at the same, he'll most likely fall regardless. But at the same time, it won't be a monumental fall that they give him a, hey, he's going to have full recovery and he'll be back as good as new. And a couple of these guys who they said, yeah, this guy's going to have some problems going forward. He would have taken massive tumbles.
I'm going to say, I don't think he'll fall if he gets real healthy. He'll be ready to go by a training camp.
Right now, Simmons is a question mark, so we play it by ear. That's the best way to put it. Play him by ear. Next up, Chris. All right.
Brian Burns. Titans are out on the clock at 19. I'm drafting Brian Burns. The dynamic between Bud Adams and Mr. Burns should be entertaining, to say the least. I've always wanted to say that. Bud Adams, Mr. Burns, use those two characters in the same sentence. So, and the Titans do need a player to replace Arakpo. So Brian Burns, he does that. Harold Landry, that pass rushing tandem. So while Arakpo and Derek Morgan carried that pass rush for years, now it's Brian Burns and Harold Landry. Bud Adams and Mr. Burns will bond in Tennessee.
And next one up, Pittsburgh is.
This is a slam dunk pick. Devin White at 20. I've seen Devin White mocked as early as 8 to Detroit or 10 to Denver. I don't think he's as talented as Roquan Smith or Tremaine Edmonds, which is why I have him at 20, but I have seen him getting pushed up on a lot of mock drafts.
Yeah, the big thing that for Pittsburgh that I'm looking at is they are a freaking dumpster fire. Okay? They are a disaster at the moment. You have their two top offensive weapons. Le'Veon Bell was just released, or will be released at the beginning of the league year. Their top receiver in the NFL, by most people's standards, Antonio Brown. They have said that they will trade him, but they will not trade him to the NFC North. and they prefer to trade him to the NFC rather than the AFC to get him out of the conference, which narrows that gap down to 16. So that's going to be difficult to do. Ben Roethlisberger's not getting any younger. The defense is a mess. This is probably the worst shape I've seen Pittsburgh in well over a decade. So, in the end, I would say Pittsburgh doesn't like taking risks on a lot of trouble players. So the one I was thinking of is out. Devin White fills a huge need. So I would have to also say that Deontay Thompson probably has the most upside of anybody that's left. And let's face it, he is very comparable to Cam Chancellor. I was the only one that I know of anywhere that said Cam Chancellor would be a star. So, personally, I would have to give Deontay Thompson. Just because their defense has not been the same since Troy Polamalu left. It just hasn't. That's just the way it is.
All right. So I'm going Devin White, and Joey's going Deontay Thompson. Kerm, who do you want to agree with? I know Kerm's an Alabama fan, so he's probably going to agree with you on Deontay Thompson to Pittsburgh, even though they did draft a safety in the first round last year.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Thompson.
All right, so Deontay Thompson is the pick. I've been overruled, and the Steelers draft a safety in the first round for the second year in a row. So Devin White falls out of the top 20. Seattle's on the clock at 21. They do not need a linebacker. And this is going to be interesting because Seattle, Dwan Brown's done well with Seattle. And Seattle does have a nice cornerback. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with Seattle at 21. They've got some stability at receiver. We could go Jalen Ferguson. We could reach for Jalen Ferguson here. DeAndre Baker's another player we could reach for. I know Trey Flowers actually did well next to cornerback. Shaquem Griffin and Trey Flowers did well at cornerback for Seattle. So I'm trying to figure out, do we reach for a safety? There's Jaquan Johnson, Juan Thornhill, who I both really like as second rounders, but I think both are reaches at 21. And Nasir Adderley out of Delaware, who really impressed me at the Senior Bowl. I mean, there's a few players we could give them here, but it looks like we're going to have to reach for someone with Seattle. How do you guys feel about Seattle at 21? Do you think we have to reach for a safety here, or what's the game plan here?
I don't really think so. I think the big situation that you're looking at, because you keep saying they need to reach for somebody, but I don't think there are a lot of reaches right now, because right now what you're looking at is a group of people who almost everybody available is in the same range, talent-wise. So that is something that I don't think anything here will be in reach. If you go with DeAndre Baker, I'm a DeAndre Baker fan, and let's just be honest with you, he is a very talented quarterback. And I think one of the most talented, I was actually thinking about putting him up into the team. So I don't think that would be much of a reach if they went out and said, hey, we're going to shore up, because we were at our best when we had the Legion of Boom. We've got a couple decent guys right now. We just need one or two players to put us over the edge. And I think DeAndre Baker could be one of those guys. So I would have to reckon go to Baker, and I wouldn't think it'd be much of a reach.
Yes. DeAndre Baker to Seattle, then that's the pick. And the value's great value there for Seattle. They get a premium cornerback. And with Baltimore, I have to take Devin White here. C.J. Mosley's a free agent, and they do need a linebacker next to Mosley. So if they don't bring Mosley back, they get Devin White. And if they don't if they get Mosley back, then they can put Devin White with him and have the best linebacking core. Plus, I know my friend Drake Holiday, a huge Ravens fan, loves Devin White. So he's probably thrilled that Devin White's on the board at 22. So Devin White's the pick. I'm already deciding that pick because it's absolute travesty that Devin White's still on the board at 22.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Devin White's a good pick.
All right. 23, it's the Texans. Andre Dillard is the guy I mocked him at 23. He's still there, but there are some other offensive tackles like Max Sharping, like Greg Little, Jawan Taylor. This is a very deep tackle class, but I gave them Dillard because I feel like they need a blue chip left tackle, and Dillard's got a longer wingspan than Jonah Williams, but I think he's rawer than Jonah too. So
yeah, Dillard's one of those guys who, I'm like, I like him, but being that high in the first round, as you said, he's long. That is a little bit of an issue. Now, what we really have to look at is with the Texans potentially trying to trade David Clowney. They don't believe they can keep him. At this point in time, something might change by now and then, as we all know. They may end up needing another rush, which brings Zach Allen into the mix. And they definitely need more offensive line help. So that brings on not only Andre Dillard into the mix, but that brings in a few other players as well, including the Wisconsin offensive guard that I like so much. I am doing terrible at remembering names today.
His name's Boban Schwale. I had him at 23 for months, but I thought his Senior Bowl tape was very inconsistent. So I no longer have a guard in the first round as a result.
Yeah, but at the same time, that does bring him into play. It also brings into play brain is not looking. Yeah, it brings in one guy that I really like, that I've really liked for a while, that I think could really be a steal at some point is Yonde Kajuste from West Virginia. So he might be in consideration there. So it has some options. Elton Jenkins, Mississippi State, he'd be a good fit, as would be another guy I really like, offensive guard Chris Lindstrom. Now, I know we're all over the map a little bit here, the offensive line, but I don't think there's as much difference in these players as you would think. So, for me, my big thing, where does the most pressure come from for him? And that'd be up the middle. So I would have to go with Vince at this point.
I'm gonna say Dillard's the pick then.
I say Vince Will, you say Dillard, and Herb doesn't get a vote.
Wait, you said Vince?
Vince Will.
Okay, so Dillard and Benchwale. Kerm doesn't get a vote, laughing
about. Kerm is our tiebreaker.
What if Kern picks an SEC offensive tackle just to screw with us? Kern wouldn't do that.
I'm going to go with Brett for this one.
You say you're going with Brett? Chris said that. I thought you said Brett there for a second. I'm like, Brett's not even on the podcast.
No, I was saying an SEC. I said Kern might take an SEC offensive tackle just to screw with us, like Jawan Taylor or Greg Little.
Yeah, I thought Kern said that he was going with Brett. And
at this point, we're gonna have to summon Agent K to break the tie.
Yeah, at this point. Okay, let's move on.
I'm going Dillard to the Texans, since Kerm has not given me an answer yet.
Yeah, he agreed.
I said I was going with you, Chris.
Yeah, he agreed with you, Chris. It's all right. Chris is feeling a little neglected because you got with me more often today.
No, I can't hear what Kerm's saying, so I'm going with Dillard because we have to make a pick due to time constraints. The Raiders are on the clock at 24. They could get Zach Allen and put him at left end next to Farrell, but they could also take Devin Bush. They need a middle linebacker after what happened with Derek Johnson. So these are the two guys I'm looking at for the Raiders at 24. How do you feel about this pick?
I like Bush. He was one of my favorite players coming in. Big problem I have with him, 222 pounds. He got a lot of small defensive players this year. And that is an issue. He can very easily move over to the strong side. I think as a strong side linebacker, I think his body can hold about 5 pounds of muscle. As a strong side linebacker, 235 pounds, that's good. I mean, he'd be fine there. So 5-6 pounds of muscle, I think he'd be fine as a strong side linebacker. You're looking at middle linebacker, probably not going to make it. He's not big enough. But the Raiders need a linebacker first. I'm going to go through these different picks like I usually do, different possibilities. I'm just going to go with, I'm just going to say Bush because of time constraints, but I think he goes to the strong side linebacker rather than a middle.
All right. And that's fair because we're all going with Bush at 24, Devin Bush to the Raiders. So the Eagles at 25, Zach Allen and Max Sharping are on the board. They could get Allen for depth. I think Sharping, the reason I pushed Sharping up is because he had good games on tape versus Harold Landry and Zach Allen. He had good games on tape versus Brian Burns. He had good games on tape versus Khalil Hodge. That's enough of a reason for the Eagles to take him. Yes, he does have some weaknesses, but Jason Peters can mentor him, and you have long-term stability on the offensive line. You could also go with Dylan Mitchell out of Oregon here.
Yeah, Max Sharping, for me, I like Sharping. I think he is raw. I think he needs some work. I think he's got the physical tools down. But the big thing with him is the basic footwork and his hand placement. I mean, so I think it's a good spot for him. But let's face it, Peters isn't getting any younger. He's like 36 now or something. So, I mean, they have to get a replacement for him. And they have to be able to do it soon because Carson Wentz is not doing well. His decision-making last year was less than suspect. I mean, it was bad. He had the most dropped interceptions in the NFL at one point. So
we're all going Sharping then. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, the Colts at 26. We could give the Colts Zach Allen as a defensive end, but we could also give them Dylan Mitchell out of Oregon, who I mocked the Colts only because Dylan Mitchell had a 100-yard game on Byron Murphy. If Dillon Mitchell struggles at the combine, I think this wide receiver 2 spot's wide open for anyone to grab. And when I say wide open, I mean DK Metcalf could take this spot. A.J. Brown could take this spot. Anthony Johnson could take this spot. Deebo Samuel could take this spot. It's that wide open. But for me, Dillon Mitchell had a 100-yard game versus Byron Murphy, a 100-yard game versus Cam Bynum. I think he's the second best receiver in the draft. I've seen his route running. I love what he's done on tape. But the receivers' rankings could change after the combine. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, receiver is after the combine. Receiver really falls into place until it's basically a crapshoot. That is the one position that can change drastically during the combine. That being said, I'm going to go with Jalen Ferguson, left end out of Louisiana Tech, because the Colts need a difference maker on defense. Jalen Ferguson is the NCAA's all-time leader in sacks. Okay, you don't get a bigger game changer.
And he's not going to be working out at the combine, so the Colts would never. Nobody would ever expect the Colts to take him. That's why it's an awesome pick.
Yeah, and he'll have his regional combines and stuff, which is this is probably the first time I've ever said the regional combines and team combines are the most important thing leading up to a draft. You'll probably never hear from me again because I normally don't see those as anything more than fodder and crap, but regional combines, yes, I do put value in them because they're lesser known players. The team combines, no, those are crap. Those are nothing. But 6'4", 256 pounds. I mean, last year he had almost 18 sacks. All-time leader in sacks for the NCAA Division I. Got the size, got the speed, got the overall skill set. He would have been a top 15 pick if he could have gone to the combine. No doubt. So, for the Colts, there you go. There is your premier defensive player. Are you going to break the tie on this one?
So I was looking up something real quickly, and let's just go with Princeton. Go with Princeton.
Really?
Princeton. I have to get Princeton better because he is stealing a neglected so because I was going with you so much.
Okay. We'll do this for Chris. Throw him a bone. He'll be all right.
So we're going Dillon Mitchell, but it's a pity pick. Curb's picking Dillon Mitchell out of pity because he pities me.
Yes.
Okay, so Dillon Mitchell at 26 out of pity. That means the Raiders are back on the clock at 27, and they've got a very intriguing decision between Zach Allen and Jalen Ferguson to make.
I hate Ferguson. This is a freaking steal. I love Zach Allen, but at the same time, Ferguson's a top pick.
Yep, I agree.
They pass on him. It's just, it would be. They're not going to pass.
Yeah, and I'm going with Greg Little to save time here for the Chargers because they might release Russell Okung at left tackle, and they need a right tackle, so I'm going Greg Little to save time here. That means the Chiefs are on the clock at 29, and I'm going to have to reach for a second-round player because the Chiefs need a cornerback. They're pretty content with their 43 defense, or we could give them Khalil Hodge just for the hell of it, the Buffalo linebacker that didn't get a combine invite, because they need a replacement to Derek Johnson. I have Hodge at 30 on my board. We could either give the Chiefs Hodge to replace Derek Johnson, or we can go with a corner with a second-round grade.
Well, they do need a middle linebacker to replace Derek Johnson. They need a couple things here. They are ready for a championship push. That's why I think this is getting a little more areas to go. They have the receivers. They have everything they need in that sense.
Yeah, the defensive line actually looks good for their 43 defense. They're going to have Chris Jones, D Ford and Tom Bahal. D Ford and Justin Houston are going to be defensive ends in this 43. Hitchens will be a weak side linebacker. They could put Breland Speaks or someone else to Sam. And then you have Chris Jones and Derek Nottie at defensive tackle. So this is actually an easier transition for the Chiefs than many realize. And you got Spagnuolo, a defensive mind familiar with the Patriots. So
yeah, I'll go with Hodge. At this point, they need an impact player, and they need a middle linebacker, and Hodges. But we'll go with that.
Yep. And Green Bay at 30, I'm going to go Jotche Polite. Jotche Polite out of Florida. He's a pass rusher, a 34 outside linebacker. The Packers need that to replace Clay Matthews, so they get Polite at 30. And that means the Rams at 31, they would get Zach Allen as a replacement to Ndamukong Suh because the value is just too good, and there's not really a pass rusher with a second-round grade. Even though we want to give him an edge rusher, there really isn't that player on the board. And in this scenario, they'd get Zach Allen to replace Suh, and they'd move Brockers to nose tackle, I guess. I mean, Zach Allen's the best player on the board. The other option is to, yeah. So Zach Allen to the Rams.
Let's go with Allen because he is the best player on the board. I mean, it's their way of thinking.
Yep, and then the Patriots, Charles Omenihu. And if Trey Flowers gets franchise tagged, they might go a different route. But the reason I want Charles Omenihu is because Trey Flowers only had 7.5 sacks. Omenihu had 9.5 sacks and really stepped up for the Texas Longhorns this year. So if you give the Patriots him, you could start by establishing depth up front on the defensive line. Trey Flowers, you have Dietrich Wise Jr., Derek Rivers, who hasn't really taken that next step yet, and then you'd have Omenihu. But you'd have 4 good defensive ends, and you'd have enough stability at defensive end to make something happen. I think that's really important for the Patriots moving forward, is to have that stability at defensive end, along with the stability in the defensive backfield if you want to keep a championship caliber defense in New England. You're also losing 2 defensive tackles to free agency. Neither had a sack, neither Danny Shelton or Malcolm Brown. So we're going to give the Patriots Charles Omenihu because he's 32 on the board, and that'll wrap up the first round.
Well, I was looking at it to go a different way, actually. Completely different.
Well, I'm a Patriots fan. I want to go with Omenihu.
I was thinking about going so far in the other direction, it would make your head spin. As a Patriots fan, you probably would have wanted to kill me. I still would think it would have been good for him.
All right, so we're on round 2 now. I don't know how many picks we'll get through, but we're on round 2. And 33, I've got Omari Uwari to the Cardinals, but they don't have to go with him because they got Robert Alford to pair with Patrick Peterson. And Robert Alford is an upgrade over the guy that the Browns got rid of that the Cardinals signed. Jamar Taylor or something?
Well, here is, I'm going to go, I was going to go with the Patriots. I'm going to go with give your young quarterbacks some protection up the middle. Give them one of the top 2 guards left on the board. Give them Oklahoma's Ben Powers.
I love this pick considering that the free agent, Mike Iupati, is going to be a free agent. The Cardinals could keep him, but they want to cut him. So you need a replacement for Mike Iupati. And you did sign Justin Pugh as a right guard, but you need a left guard. So from that standpoint, I love this pick, Ben Powers to Arizona as a left guard to fill up that interior offensive line. I think Chris Lindstrom's the top guard in the class from Boston College, but I have no problem with Ben Powers going to the Cardinals because I think he's a better scheme fit. And the Colts, we gave the Colts Anthony Nelson in our mock as a defensive end at 34. We gave them Dylan Mitchell at 26. So I'm debating between the Penn State corner and Anthony Nelson because if you went with the Penn State corner, you could ease him in. Next year, you're going to have Kenny Moore and you're going to have Quincy Wilson, who looked good at the end of his second year. There are people saying Quincy Wilson's going to surpass Kenny Moore as the #1 corner in year 3, and that Kenny Moore just got lucky last year, and that he's not going to maintain his high level of play. So if Kenny Moore declines, then you bring in the Penn State corner as a nickel corner and then ease him into the lineup next to Quincy Wilson. And you wouldn't have to rush him in. And then with Quincy Wilson left, you'd still have 2 good corners down the road. But you also have a very good defensive end, Anthony Nelson of Iowa. So, who I bought to the Colts at 34, by the way. So this is a tough scenario for me because I think the top 2 players on the board, you can make an argument that both could get pushed into round 1.
Yeah, and for me, at this point, it's all about impact players. Because they need guys who are going to come in and make a huge impact. And for me, one of the best impact players left on the board right now is actually a guy who is a fringe second-round pick at a lot of people's eyes, potentially even a third-round pick. But the guy is got decent size. He can eye the ball. Doesn't always get a lot of interceptions, but he can eye the ball. He had 16 pass deflections last year, 49 solo tackles. Chris Boyd, quarterback Texas, pass-happy league, got a lot of things thrown his way, made a lot of good plays, did well in everything they asked him to do. I mean, that's, just like Ferguson, Colts need game changers, guys who are going to shut people down. And that's a guy who's not going to let a lot get past him.
Yeah, but Amani did well in the Senior Bowl, and Boyd struggled in the Senior Bowl. Like, Boyd missed some assignments and coverage in the Senior Bowl. That's why I went with Amani.
He did, but he'll also have, the combine. It's like,
yeah, Boyd could surpass Amani at the combine. We'll see.
So, and remember, this is, really early. So, I think, Boyd did have some hiccups. I think there was enough on tape, at least so far, to counter that. Now, if he goes into the combine and lays an egg, then we have a real,
yeah, like if Boyd dominates the combine and Amani struggles, then you can definitely make the case for Boyd here. But I'm going with Amani by a landslide edge, the Colts.
Yeah, I think there was enough tape to balance it out. Kern, what do you think?
I'm going to go with Chase Young in this one.
All right, so I accidentally clicked on the Penn State corner, but Kermit has gone with Boyd. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mock Boyd to the 49ers are going to get the Penn State corner. And this is going to piss off a lot of the 49ers fans, but I just don't care.
I don't know, actually. I think it's a pretty good pick for the 49ers. I can't.
I mean, they got Richard Sherman and Ahkello Witherspoon. They don't need a corner, but you know what? Since we live in a draftocracy, a democracy based on draft world, and you guys both pick Boyd to the Colts, that means the 49ers get Amani, and we save time. So that's draftocracy. It's democracy in the NFL draft community. We have a draftocracy on this podcast. I believe in draftocracy. So the Giants are on the clock here at 37. Deebo Samuel's on the board. They do need a weapon for Eli. Anthony Johnson's also still on the board. Rock Ya-Sin's on the board too. But I think Deebo Samuel for the New York Giants at 37 is the best route, best option for New York here. Because he really had a strong Senior Bowl week.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to find places to fit Deebo Samuel in as we were going through, but, I mean, the cards just didn't fall his way at that point. I think he could have gone at 17. I think he could have gone at, it was 22. I think he could have gone to the Raiders as well, and at 27. But it didn't fall that way, and I think this is a pretty good landing spot for him.
Yep. And that means that the number 38 pick in the draft was the Jaguars. Now, I gave Anthony Johnson to the Jaguars at 38 in my mock. And I know he struggled against Rock Ya-Sin, the Temple corner, but I don't want to mock Rock Ya-Sin this early because I'm looking at what other options we could go here. We gave the Daniel Jones to the we gave the Jaguars Daniel Jones at 7. So Yannick Kajust, the Jaguars need a right tackle more so than a left tackle. So they don't have to go with Anthony Johnson here. They could go with Chris Lindstrom as a right guard to replace A.J. Cann. He's my top guard on the board. They could go with Jawan Taylor, the SEC Florida right tackle. There's a lot of different routes the Jaguars could go here at 38.
Yeah, and the big thing last year with their offensive line was injuries. He had a lot of people injured. A lot of
Noah Fant's also still on the board.
It really hurt them. The big problem they had was that their quarterback couldn't throw to the sidelines. He still can't throw to the sidelines to this day. And that's an issue. So, with a quarterback being taken in round 1, you solve one issue. You can't solve injuries through the draft. That's just not a thing. Another thing they had issues with was their pass rush last year from the outside. Why? I'll never know. They did. And third reason, obviously, they got rid of their top 3 also, wide receivers from the previous year when they went to the AFC Championship. Not going to help your cause. So I think receiver is best on the board right now. So that would probably take care of the biggest issue that they have not taken care of too. So Anthony Johnson would be the best player for them at this point.
Surprised we haven't gotten into this yet, but what is y'all's opinion on the Robert Kraft news?
I'm going to stay away from prostitutes.
Yeah, I've got like 40 fangirls that email me stuff, and I never reply to any of them. And when I say fangirls, I mean they're females that look like prostitutes. So we could get Rob Kraft some fangirls from Draft Utopia if he's interested. I'm kidding. But let's get back to the point here. I know that's inappropriate, but yeah.
From all the reports I read, he had no knowledge that it was a trafficking place that he was visiting. So he was just like millions of other Americans got called up, paying paying somebody for sex. He didn't know all the other stuff.
And it's like, whether our personal opinions about prostitution are one way or the other, the thing is, in America, prostitution, human trafficking, and things that is already legal.
Unless you're in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah.
Then it is legal in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But everywhere else, it's illegal.
That's because Las Vegas is, let's put it this way, when it comes to Vegas, Vegas is not as regulated. It is not as regulated as other places in the United States. And for good reasons that we will not get into on this podcast.
Good.
So that's our opinion on that, and we're sticking to it. An opinion of no opinion.
What the Jaguars, the whole Rob Kraft thing got us distracted from what we're going to do with the Jaguars at 38.
Wide receiver.
Anthony Johnson, all right. Number 39, Tampa Bay's on the board. Yanni Kajust is the best player on the board. But it seems like Tampa Bay might franchise tag Jonathan Smith. So this is what makes this pick so complicated. So if that's the case, then Anthony Nelson would be the pick for Tampa at 39 because he's a defensive end out of Iowa, best player on the board. So if Tampa Bay wants to franchise tag their left tackle Donovan Smith, which I'm strongly against, then they go Anthony Nelson since they cut Vinny Curry at defensive end. Plus, Anthony Nelson's the top player on my board, so... All right, so number 40, the Bills are on the clock, and we're going to go Noah Fant. We're going to get Josh Allen, a playmaker. I mean, the Bills, they get Jonah Williams for Josh Allen, so he gets some protection. They get Noah Fant at tight end because they released Charles Clay.
Fant is an awesome pick here. Josh Allen, he needs tight end. He needs playmaking tight end. And Fant is a great pass catcher, a very good playmaker at tight end. And he is somebody who I really like in this pick. It's like, get him a receiver, get him a tight end, get him an offensive tackle, and see how much better he does than he did last year.
I don't know if he'll make it.
If you remember... Okay. Did you get the same beat that I did?
I don't know what happened. I think a gerbil may have hacked into the podcast. So, yeah, but Noah Fant, awesome pick for Buffalo at 40.
Yes, let's go with that.
Yes, so the gerbil's gone, and we're going to go back to we're going to go back to Denver at 41. We're going to go Elgton Jenkins. They need a center to replace Matt Paradis. Jenkins had one decent game on tape versus Alabama's Quinnen Williams. He might even get pushed into the first round. So we're going to give Denver a center for Drew Lock to build around in the trenches. And that leaves us to Cincinnati at 42. They do have some options they could go with. I don't think Christian Miller's a good fit for the Bengals. Rock Ya-Sin could be a pick for the Bengals in round 2. They could also go with Lindstrom as a right guard. Chris Lindstrom, the top guard on my board. They do need a right guard to replace Kevin Zeitler. They could go Bobin Schwale as well. There's a lot of options for the Bengals here at 42. But what are you thinking the Bengals should do here? No objections to Lidstrom. Okay, then. So Lidstrom will be the pick while Joey gets his microphone fixed. So I'm gonna check. I'm gonna check with Joey on Facebook Messenger really quickly. If he has to go to Walmart, he might have to go to Walmart.
Don't know. He hasn't told us.
He hasn't told us anything yet. So I'm gonna clear some picks here. Detroit. What are you thinking? Do you think Detroit goes corner in round 2? We give them Rock Ya-Sin. I'm going to let Kerr make some picks here to save some time. How do you feel about Detroit taking the Temple?
I don't have any picks, Chris.
Well, Detroit picks at 43.
Let's go past. Let's go like that. They're available.
All right, Christian Miller out of Alabama then. The Lions get a second pass rusher. That means that number 43 went to Detroit. So 44 would go to Green Bay. Yeah, and we're going to give the Packers Jaquan Johnson then, because I was thinking Rock Ya-Sin, but Jaquan Johnson's a nice replacement for HaHa Clinton-Dix. 45, I gave Atlanta Ben Powers, but they're both off the board. So this is a tough situation for Atlanta to be in. And I do like Rock Ya-Sin as a nickel corner, and I just think the value's too good to ignore at this point. I know Atlanta does need a guard, but I just don't know if there's a guard worth taking here at 45, Kerm. Would you go with a guard that's a reach if you need 2 starting guards, or would you take the best player on your board?
If I need guard, I would go for the guard because it's not a rate if it's a position of need. That's not necessarily a reach.
I guess we'll go with Ross Pierschbacher at 45 then, because he's the best guard / center on our board.
There's a guard schedule. The guards, you got a player that about the 50th best player. You have to take it 45. You don't have another thing until 70. Is it really a race if you take up 5 spots when there's no one value between your picks? That's not really a reach.
All right, so we'll go Ross Pierschbacher. He's 46 on my board. I gave Washington him as a center, but we'll give Atlanta him as a guard. I am getting a message from Joey on Facebook, so I appreciate Joey calling in the podcast as usual. So Washington, I gave Washington Byron Murphy in round 1. There is a temptation to go Kyler Murray here in round 2 with no Alex Smith, and I'm guessing that's what we'll end up doing. So Joey cannot call back in, so we'll do the second round, and then we can decide whether to talk about the Stadium Series or we'll end the show on that note. Like, we'll finish round 2, then we'll do the Stadium Series, and then we'll call it a show. How's that sound, Kerm? That way we don't have to overdo things. I mean, I could go on round 3 and 4, but I feel like round 2 is a good stopping point, and then we'll call it a show. Because we're going to have to resort this board after the Combine anyway. So 47 is, so Washington goes Kyler Murray. 47, I gave Trayvon Mullen to the Panthers. But Panthers, they're going to go with Rock Ya-Sin. The value's just too good here to ignore. And Miami gets screwed out of a quarterback, ironically. So we're going to give the Dolphins. What do you think we should give the Jawan Taylor out of Florida? I feel like that's the best fit for them. So, yes. The Browns are up at 49. Best player on the board here is Yadni Kajuste, left tackle, West Virginia. Joey would not – I don't know how Joey would feel about this pick, but we're going to give him best player on the board. So that's 49. Pick 50 is going to be the Vikings pick. They get another defensive player in Chase Winovich, who's the #1 player on my board at the moment. He has the same hair as Clay Matthews, so you guess you could move him to right outside linebacker to replace Anthony Barr. So 51, Tennessee Titans, Bo Ben-Schwale. You get a right guard. We talked about Ben-Schwale. He's an amazing value pick at 51. Pittsburgh at 52, they can choose between Trayvon Mullen, Julian Love, or Joe Juwan Williams at a Vanderbilt. And I like Trayvon Mullen the best for Pittsburgh's scheme among these three corners. So he's the pick for me easily. I mean, Notre Dame did struggle versus Clemson, so that's something to take into account. 53 was Philadelphia. I gave them Mack Wilson of Alabama. They need linebacker help, the Eagles. And they have Baltimore's second-round pick. I think Kerman would agree that's the best route for them to go. 54 is Houston. Houston, I gave them David Edwards in my mock, but Julian Love's the best player on the board, and they do need another corner. So I feel like Julian Love would make sense for the Texans here in this part in the second round, just because of the value and because you do need another corner. And then after that, you could go with David Edwards as a right tackle, or you could go Drew Sarnia, the Oklahoma right guard, who really had a strong week in Mobile in the Senior Bowl. And I'm leaning Drew Sarnia. But I'm going to let Kerm decide. The Wisconsin tackle, right tackle, or the Oklahoma right guard? Oklahoma wins. So Kerm picks the Oklahoma guard at 55. 56, I had Chris Boyd going to the Patriots with that second-round pick, but he's off the board. So I guess the Patriots get Juwan Williams out of Vanderbilt here. And that leaves 57 with the Eagles getting A.J. Brown. David Edwards, I like A.J. Brown. He's a steal at 57. 58, Juan Thornhill. I'm going to mock him to the the Cowboys. Cowboys getting a safety. I feel like they need a safety, and Juan Thornhill does fit the bill. So with the Colts at 59, I would say that the Colts at 59, they would get Tillery because David Edwards just really doesn't fit the Colts. They have their right tackle in Braden Smith. Now the Chargers, they could get David Edwards at 60. So that means 61 belongs to would belong to the Chiefs, I believe. They don't need a tackle. They'd get Coney, Notre Dame linebacker. Colin Saunders, the Western Illinois defensive tackle, would go to the Saints. The Chiefs would get Benny Snell Jr., and then the Patriots would get David Sills, the 5th out of West Virginia. So I'm just curious who got pushed up into round 2, because I don't think we picked any of the I feel like we skipped a pick. I don't know if we did or didn't, but I feel like we reached for someone. Oh, well, we'll just click on Bobby Evans. Those are all the players in rounds 1 through 2, though. And this board will get tweaked after the combine. So thank you guys so much for tuning into our board here. So, all right. So thank you guys for that.